Hello, this is Professor Swanson, and we have another biocast for you, this time dealing with Punnet squares. Punnet squares can be intimidating for some people sometimes because it's a blend of math and genetics, but they're really pretty straightforward once you kind of see how they work, and hopefully after this biocast you'll be amazed that you ever had any trouble with them. So for example, we could take a look at this family. They have twin daughters and they look incredibly different, and the question is, how could that happen? So the answer is that each male can produce millions of different types of sperm, and each female can produce millions of different types of eggs based on all of the genes that it takes to make us human. And those genes are what control our phenotype, or how we look to the outside world. So the probability of a sperm that has all of the exact same alleles for all those genes fusing with an egg that has all of the exact same alleles for all of those genes as a previous child is incredibly unlikely. So we should rarely ever see two individuals from the same parents who look alike, with the exception of identical twins. Now we can actually figure out what the probability is of different types of traits appearing in those individuals using our Punnet squares. And that's what we're going to try and do today. Let's take a look at an example we can see in ourselves. All you have to do is look in the mirror and you can tell whether or not you have freckles. And the presence of freckles is controlled by a single gene with two different alleles. One allele, which is for the presence of freckles, will represent as a capital F. The other allele, which is for the absence of freckles, will represent as a lowercase f. And now we have done this because the allele for freckles, capital F, is dominant to the allele for absence of freckles. So when we look at this individual in the picture, we can say that she must either be a capital F genotype, so homozygous for the dominant allele, or she could be a capital F and a lowercase f, or a heterozygote. One copy of the dominant allele, one copy of the recessive allele, which means that she will have freckles. In contrast, an individual without freckles is going to be homozygous for the recessive allele, and will have two little f's instead. Okay, so let's look at our example and see how a Punnet square might work. So let's go ahead and make a Punnet square for two individuals who are going to have some babies with respect to whether or not they have freckles. First thing we have to do is decide what the genotypes are of the two individuals involved. So our female, we're going to say, is homozygous for the dominant allele for the presence of freckles. The male, on the other hand, we're going to say is homozygous for the recessive alleles of no freckles. Now the female can make two different types of eggs. She can make egg 1 and egg 2. She can make two different types of eggs because she got one copy of her chromosomes from her father and one from her mother, and they could be different. In this case, they're the same though. So the first type of egg she could produce would have a capital F, the dominant allele for freckles in it. The second type of an egg she could produce would also have the dominant allele for freckles. So we're going to show here that our female is represented by the columns. That means our male is going to be represented by the rows. Now, how many different types of sperm can that male make? Every male has two copies of each chromosome, so therefore there's always two types of gametes or sperm that he can make. In this case though, since our individual is homozygous for the recessive allele, he can only produce sperm that has the recessive allele for no freckles. Now, all we have to do here is cross multiply. So basically we take and say the female is going to contribute a dominant F allele in this situation. The male sperm is going to be a recessive F, or no freckles. Similarly, the second type of an offspring that could be produced from female's egg 2 is going to have a capital F, the dominant allele for freckles. This egg is going to fuse with the male's sperm type 1, which is recessive for no freckles. Egg 1 is going to contribute a capital F for freckles. Sperm 2 is going to contribute a lowercase f for no freckles. Lastly, we're going to have egg 2 and sperm 2. The female is going to contribute a capital F, the male a lowercase f. So what we can see now is we've made 4 different types of offspring, which should account for all the different combinations we could possibly get. But in each case, it's always a capital F and a lowercase f. So in this situation, all of our offspring will be a capital F and a lowercase f, or each offspring will have one dominant allele for the presence of freckles, one recessive allele for the absence of freckles. So 100% of our babies will have freckles. Now let's take a look at a slightly more complex situation. We still have the same generalities. We're going to have our females represented by columns, our males representing the rows. So this will be egg type 1. This will be egg type 2. This will be sperm type 1 and sperm type 2. So the 2 different types of eggs and sperm that the males and females can make. Now we're going to make this one a little more complicated. We're going to say that the female again has freckles, but we're going to say that she is heterozygous this time. She has one copy of the dominant allele for freckles, one copy of the recessive alleles for absence of freckles. Our male, we will continue having no freckles. So this time, the 2 types of eggs that could be produced by the female, one will have the dominant allele for freckles. Egg type 2 would have the recessive allele for no freckles. The male, again, just like in the last example, both of his types of sperm will have the recessive allele for no freckles. So now when we go ahead and allow these 2 to make some babies, we can see that the first individual, the first type of baby, will get the capital F from the female's egg, and the lowercase f, the recessive allele, from the male's sperm. A second type of offspring in this case, though, the female from egg 2 gives a recessive no freckle allele, and the male gives a recessive no freckle allele. So now this individual will not have freckles. Another type of baby that we have would be the female giving off the dominant allele for freckles, the male giving off the recessive allele for absence of freckles, and our 4th type again would be the female gives a recessive allele, the male gives a recessive allele, and we end up with another individual who has no freckles. So what we can see now is that from this combination, 50% of those babies will have the freckles, and 50% of the offspring of their babies won't have freckles. Okay, let's go on to the most complex situation we can have in this scenario. Same setup as before always, though. We're going to put our females in the columns and our males in the rows. First column is going to represent egg type 1. Second column is going to represent egg type 2. First row is going to represent sperm type 1. Second row is going to represent sperm type 2. Now, how are we going to make this more complicated? Well, we're going to have the female be heterozygous for freckles, and this time we're going to make the male heterozygous for freckles as well. And the question you should ask yourself is, in this scenario, when we have 2 individuals both having freckles, is there any way that they can make a baby without freckles? Well, let's take a look. So, the first type of egg that the female can produce is an egg that has the dominant allele for freckles. The second type of an egg she can produce is an egg that has the recessive allele for lack of freckles. The male this time can produce one type of sperm that has the dominant allele for freckles and a second type of sperm that has the recessive allele for lack of freckles. And now when we combine the different eggs and different sperm types, we'll see what our offspring give. When we mix egg 1 and sperm 1, the individual is homozygous for the dominant allele of freckles, so they will have freckles. When we mix egg 2, the recessive allele for freckles, with sperm 1, the dominant allele for freckles, we can see that the offspring will have freckles. When we mix egg 1 and sperm 2, we get egg 1 contributing the dominant alleles for freckles, sperm 2 contributing a recessive allele for no freckles, so this individual will have freckles as well. And lastly, when we mix egg 2 and sperm 2, we can see that the female gives off a recessive allele for no freckles, the male's sperm has a recessive allele for no freckles, so our offspring will not have freckles. Now, interestingly, when we mix these two heterozygous individuals and allow them to have offspring, we can see a unique ratio that comes into play. We see 1, 2, 3 individuals having freckles, and one of them does not. So we see the very standard, typical 3-to-1 ratio, with 3 of those individuals having the dominant phenotype and 1 individual having the recessive phenotype. If we look within the genotypes, we can see that we have 1 individual who is homozygous for the dominant allele. We have 2 individuals who are heterozygous, and then we have 1 individual again who is homozygous for the recessive allele. So our 3-to-1 phenotypic ratio is made up of a 1 to 2 to 1 genotypic ratio. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about how Punnett squares work. All we're doing is looking at the female's genotype. Based on that genotype, what are the different types of eggs that she can make? Then we look at the male's genotype. What are the different types of sperm that he can make? And what happens when each of those different eggs and different sperm come together? So that's how we do a Punnett square when we only have one single trait. Now, in another biocast coming up, I'll talk about what we do when we have multiple traits and try to do a Punnett square with those. So until then, I hope you have a good day.